Namaskaram. Hello and welcome hardworking individuals. Let me start today's class with a story. Story about urine therapy which was related with Pakistan's nuclear program. Yes, the urine therapy which Morarji Desai, the India's prime minister back then, used to follow. And the Pakistan's president, General Ziaul Haq, used to phone call to Morarji Desai to inquire more about this urine therapy. Urine therapy was nothing but drinking your own urine for health benefits. Okay. But then what was the surprising thing in it? Slowly and gradually, when General Ziaul Haq was able enough to gain the confidence of Morarji Desai, it is believed that one fine day Morarji Desai said that we know about Pakistan's nuclear program, and it also in a way gave the details of the raw officers in Pakistan at that time. And it is said that after that, Pakistan was able enough to eliminate all those raw officers at that time. And Morarji Desai was blamed for this. But again, this is something in the history that is not talked a lot. There are few people who support this, but there are few who say that this is not correct. Well, whatever be it, but this story was something that I wanted to share with you. There is also a strong stance of Morarji Desai where he says, when asked by the US to sign the NPT or the non-proliferation treaty that was for the nuclear, he says that it's like robbers asking you to not rob. So that's what was Morarji Desai. And here you can also see PM Atal Bihari Vajpayee, but at that time he was not the PM. At that time he was the foreign minister. And with this, let's start the class for the India's foreign policy under PM Morarji Desai. So after Indira Gandhi, we see who took over. It was PM Morarji Desai from March 1977 to July 1979, and he will come at a time frame when India was under the controversial emergency period. We'll discuss that in some other class. And his government formed by the Janata Party at that time. It was India's first non-Congress coalition, and it sought to be termed as one of the most genuine non-alignment or true non-alignment. Why we are saying this, we will see in this class very soon. So the Desai's foreign policy was based on the moral foundations rooted in Gandhian ideals or the non-violence. He also believed in the balanced non-alignment, maintaining equidistance from both superpowers, that's USA and the USSR at that time, regional cooperation, emphasis on improving relations with the immediate neighbors, and the nuclear pacifism, strong opposition to nuclear weapons. Now, he also went on to say that Indira Gandhi's nuclear test was wrong, and he strongly condemned it. Now, differences from Indira Gandhi's policies, let's see. So, while Gandhi had developed close ties with the USSR thoroughly in the 1971 Indo-Soviet Treaty, Desai was maintaining some distance while also maintaining the relations. Western engagement, Desai actively persuaded improved relationship with the United States, which was not to be at the time of Indira Gandhi. Nuclear policy, unlike Gandhi's 1974 Pokhran nuclear test, Desai opposed nuclear weapon development and also pledged that we are not going to do any further nuclear test. And intelligence operations, Desai significantly reduced the budget on RAW, that is the research and the analysis wing, viewing it was a tool of political operation. Now, relationship with the USA, this is very prominent thing that we should see. So the relationship between Desai and President Jimmy Carter at that time represented a very high point in the India-US relationship during the late 1970s. So Carter visited India in January 1978. President Carter, on a 3-day visit to India, marked a significant warming of bilateral relation. Carter also addressed the Indian Parliament and participated in a public rally. There were joint declarations about the economic cooperation and trade expansion, as well as for the technology transfer and the Landsat satellite data sharing. But Desai also went on to visit USA, that was in June 1978, and there he also addressed the Congress. Now, nuclear policy tensions were already there. As you know, USA has already put sanctions on India because Indira Gandhi had done nuclear tests. So there was still some disagreement between Morarji Desai and Carter. Desai refused to sign the nuclear proliferation treaty, famously comparing it to two robbers, asking him not to commit robbery. Now, uranium supply, obviously, US Congress under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Act of 1978 restricted uranium supplies to India, but Carter personally lobbied senators in 1980 to allow uranium sales to India for the Tarapur nuclear plant. Okay, and there were some safeguard issues also, which Desai rejected as contrary to India's sovereignty. US wanted that they can plant their own members in India's nuclear plants, okay, which was rejected by Morarji Desai at that time. Now let's see what is this Non-Proliferation Act of 1978. So it was a United States federal law enacted to provide more effective control over the spread of nuclear explosive. Now it was signed into law by the President Jimmy Carter on March 10, 1978. The act declares that the nuclear explosive devices pose a grave threat to the US Secretary and also to the international peace. It restricts US exports of nuclear materials equipments, and there were some key points also of this, like the encouragement of nations to ratify the Treaty of Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons or agree to comparable safeguard agreements. Okay, so this was on total what was NPT of 1978. Okay, but India did not sign the NPT. What about the relationship with the USSR under the Morarji Desai government? So there was some criticism of Morarji Desai while Indira Gandhi was in rule, while Indira Gandhi was inclined towards the Soviet. So Soviet was apprehended that whether Morarji will keep good relations with Soviet or not. But Foreign Minister Andrei Gromyko visited India in April 1977, and he found the things to be good. But later on we find that Prime Minister Desai chose Soviet Union for his first state visit, demonstrating continuity in the relationship, because you must remember that in 1975, when there was war with Pakistan, and when Britain, when USA, when China, all were against India at that time, Soviet was the one who stood with India. So that is something was still remembered by Morarji Desai as well. There was this space cooperation during Kosygyn's March 1979 visit. Soviets proposed joint space mission. But like with USA, there was tension. There was some tension with USSR also. One was the Afghanistan policy. Desai reportedly advised Soviet leaders that the Taraki government should broaden its support base rather than rely solely on Soviet backing. There was this China policy. Moscow was concerned about India's effort to normalize relationship with China, and also genuine non-alignment. Desai's emphasis on balanced relations with all power. He was not inclined towards Moscow. Okay, he was maintaining equidistance with all the superpowers at that time. The relationship foundation remained strong due to India's continued dependence on Soviet for the military equipment, substantial trade relationship, and long-term economic assistance programs. What about the relationship with China? Relationship with China slowly and gradually started to be a bit better. There was this foreign minister, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, one of the very first, or after many decades, he was the one who went on to visit uh, China at that time, and it was an historic visit in the February 1979. First visit by an Indian foreign minister to China in decades, meeting with Premier Hua Guofeng and Vice Premier Deng Xiaoping and Foreign Minister Huang Hua. Agreement to unfreeze the border issue and maintain tranquility at there. They also started the trade after this, because after 1962 the trade was not going on. There were these border discussions of when Vajpayee ji visited. Also, China modified its pro-Pakistan stance on Kashmir, and China's motivation was obviously China is not going to do anything for the sake of friendship, but there was concern about Soviet influence in South Asia, and also a desire to counter the Indo-Soviet Treaty of 1971. But there were still the limitations, and Pakistan was one factor which continued to complicate this bilateral relationship into a triangular conflict. Okay, now what about the relationship with Pakistan? With Pakistan, relationship were quite good. Even Morarji Desai was nominated with Nisane Pakistan, that is Pakistan's highest civilian award at that time. On the personal diplomacy level, Desai established personal rapport with military ruler General Ziaul Haq, who went on to become the president also of Pakistan. And there were regular telephonic conversation, often about Desai's famous urine therapy that I already told you. Okay, Vajpayee's Pakistan visit, External Affairs Minister Vajpayee's visit to Pakistan was historic. First Indian foreign minister to visit Pakistan in 10 years. And it is said that Vajpayee said that I am trying to forget what I have said in past, and I want you people also to extend the hand of friendship. So there were some agreement and policies like the bilateral agreement on consulate facilities for the airline personnel, direct telecommunication like via satellite, good traffic agreement was done. The size approach to Kashmir was involved, their adherence to the Simla agreement. Also, the nuclear concern, the relationship was complicated by Pakistan's nuclear program at that time, and the Desai warned the US about Pakistan's nuclear ambitions also. Now, there was this place that India would smash any Pakistani nuclear test, but it was not done by India. And the telephonic conversation with GR reportedly revealed India's intelligence network that I have already told you about, and claims that this led to the capture and execution of many Indian raw agents at that time. Now, what about the relationship with the neighbors? So, India and Bangladesh were having some water sharing issue. The most significant bilateral issue was the Farakka Dam dispute. 1977, there was this agreement, a 5-year water sharing agreement was signed covering the lean season flows of January to May. And long-term augmentation, both countries explored possibilities for increasing dry season flows through various engineering solutions. Okay, this is something that we see. Next was the India Nepal. They were having quite good relationship, friendship treaty obligations were there. India Sri Lanka relationship with Sri Lanka also remained stable, and there were these cultural and religious ties going on. Now, what about the non-alignment movement and the UN? So that this was a genuine non-alignment doctrine. Desai's interpretation of non-alignment differed from his predecessors by emphasizing true equidistance between power blocks, the genuine non-alignment. It sought to reduce tilt, no tilting towards Soviet Union or USA, maintain autonomy. We have a decision making power, and also moral leadership, provide ethical leadership to the developing world. Okay, and NAM leadership, nuclear disarmament as a priority agenda was followed, new international economic order for developing countries, anti-colonial and anti-apartheid struggles, and peaceful resolution for the international disputes under the NAM leadership, that was India following under PM Morarji Desai. Continued advocacy for nuclear disarmament, supported decolonization, promoted South-South cooperation, and emphasized human rights. That was under UN engagement at that time. There were some other nuclear policy and other impacts that we have already seen, that fundamental philosophical opposition to the nuclear weapons based on Gandhian principle. 1974 test criticism publicly. Morarji Desai stated that Indira Gandhi's 1974 nuclear test was basically wrong and not necessary, and he also committed that in future he is not going to conduct any nuclear test. There was this discriminatory treaty also argued that NPT created unfair distinction between nuclear haves and the have-nots. Universal disarmament advocated for complete nuclear disarmament by all nuclear powers, and no first use was also supported by Morarji Desai for the nuclear weapons. Now, US relations impacted the uranium supply. This we have already seen. There was these US restrictions on uranium. Safeguard dispute, disagreement over the comprehensive safeguard requirement. And also the Carter's efforts, President Carter personal intervention to maintain the nuclear cooperation was maintained between Carter and Morarji Desai at that time. There were some long-term implications. India delayed India's weaponization program by several years, established precedent for India's minimum deterrence doctrine, and also influenced India's approach to nuclear disarmament advocacy. There was this economic diplomacy also that we see with US. We will see that they focused on technology transfer and educational exchanges. Soviet Union continued large-scale trade agreement and industrial cooperation. China limited but symbolic resumption of the bilateral trade. and regional partners enhanced trade with the South Asian neighbors at that time. But with that, what was the philosophy of Morarji Desai? He believed in the self-reliance, also the fiscal discipline and the Gandhian economics. This is the Desai's approach to the economic philosophy at that time. With this, we have come to the end of Desai's tenure, and there are few questions here which you can see if you're preparing for the examination. These questions might help you. Like this is for BRICS. You must know it was formed by the Brazil, Russia, India, and China at first, and later on South Africa was also added to it. Then there is this next question, the declaration of conduct of parties in South China Sea. By the way, if you want the PDF of these classes for free, you can join the Telegram channel, official Telegram channel of Sikra Academy. And also, if you have any question, you can call on the numbers given below and we will answer you personally. Yes, you can call and ask any question to any educator and we will answer it for free. You will not have to pay anything. So these are the questions. So for the PDFs and also for your queries, you can call us and you can get this PDFs for free. With that, if you're preparing for UPSC, TSPSC or APPSC, guys, for one-on-one live mentorship with Deepika ma'am, you can join our mentorship program. Here, you will be trained by Deepika ma'am as well as we all educators will be there. She has trained hundreds of aspirants, guys, and this is the opportunity for you to shorten your journey from an aspirant to an administrative officer. Well, with this, we come to the end of the class. Keep working hard. Today or tomorrow, you will be successful. Thank you so much. Namaskaram.